Today, we're honored to welcome Chris James to the show. I'm very excited to have him on. He talks about a very important topic, which is fasting, right? And fasting is one definitely the keys to longevity. This man here has an amazing story, a lot of knowledge and expertise when it comes to this. And utilizing this tool in our own lives can definitely transform our health, our wellness, and there's so many different tactics and science and tools that we can get into. And that's why I'm very happy to have him on today. How are you doing, man?
Hey, I appreciate it, Anthony. I'm glad to be here and be able to talk about fasting and anything else that kind of comes up.
Absolutely. I'm very curious to hear your story and how you got into fasting and how you're helping people today.
In my late 20s, I was in construction. I was an electrician, and I noticed that a lot of the guys around me who were only maybe 5, 10 years older than me presented as if they were 15 or even 20 years older. And I noticed one guy in particular, he was probably in his 40s at the time, early 40s, and he had an issue with his bladder. He couldn't. It seemed like he couldn't hold his bladder, like his urine, for more than probably an hour or so. So every hour or so, he'd have to go to the bathroom. And I'm talking to him. I'm talking to some of the other guys about their issues, and they're just like, "Man, we're just getting old, right?" And then I started to notice. I went inside and I started to notice that I was having issues. Cognitive decline. I was having thinning hair. I noticed that, like, at lunchtime, I would get like very sleepy, and this was all new. This was not anything that I'd ever dealt with before in the past. And once again, I was only late 20s, so I was like, okay, something is severely wrong with my health. Even though people would look at me and be like, "Oh, you're fine," I knew something was wrong, and so I decided to start pursuing knowledge about the body, like natural wellness techniques, dietary strategy, because I also was dealing with, I had an infection that had been getting worse, had been worsening over the course of about 10 years. And the doctors, I went to the traditional doctors. They told me that there was nothing wrong. All the tests came back negative. One doctor said it was in your head. And then eventually I went to a specialist, and the specialist was kind of like, "I don't really care whether, we can figure out exactly what it is or not. I'm just going to give you a whole bunch of drugs and we'll knock it out." So he just started giving me drugs. And I realized that he was practicing on me. And then I started to think, "Oh, that's why they call these practices. Oh, I have a practice." And it just started, everything started to click. It's like they don't know what they're doing. But it was the first time I had ever been that close to, medical professionals, because, like, growing up, I was not going to the hospital. I wasn't going to the doctor. That just wasn't my thing. And so when the specialist had given me all of the drugs that he had to offer, he was like, "You know what? I've done everything I could do, but maybe what you're dealing with is dietary." And when everything kind of came full circle, because at the same time that, I'm getting these drugs from the doctor, I'm also doing my own research. And when he said that, I was almost relieved, because I felt like he wasn't going to be able to help me. And so at first I was a little bit distraught, because I'm like, I'm going to have to deal with this for the rest of my life, because he's not going to be able to help me. And then I started researching, and then when he said it was dietary, it was like, oh, there's another option, and it's probably better than the options I've been using. So at that point, I started researching the alkaline diet. I came across a guy by the name of Dr. Sabi, who talked about this natural holistic diet, free of GMOs, organic, blah, 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 blah. And as I was researching his work, I noticed that he had mentioned fasting. And at the same time, I was researching another guy who's my favorite researcher. His name is Dave Murphy. He was talking about fasting. And so I just felt led. I was just like, you know what? I need to try this fasting thing. And so I decided, me and my brother was living with me at the time, and I decided to start fasting. I wanted to do the 40-day Jesus fast. That was my goal. I ended up doing 14 days water only, my first fast. And on day 2, I noticed the irritation associated with my infection had subsided. I was losing 2 pounds per day on average. And also, I after maybe about 4 or 5 days, I had a moment of euphoria, like this clarity of mind. I wanted to be healthy. I wanted to be happy. I didn't want to drink anymore. Like it was all of these positive thoughts just overwhelmed me, and I knew that fasting was my path.
I love it, man. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you went on this journey of transformation in a sense. So it's kind of like a step by step thing that led you to fasting. Is that right?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Awesome, man. So can you speak about fasting in terms of the benefits that people may see when they first start out?
Well, the benefits, it depends on how you approach fasting. So the benefits are far reaching, and a lot of the people that I work with, their main thing is weight loss. That's like the popular thing. People want to fast for weight loss. So as I mentioned earlier, you can lose about 2 pounds per day on average, is an average, when you do water fasting. And that is pretty consistent if you fast for up to 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, the average changes because the body and what the body does changes. So from day 14 to 21, you experience what I call the fasting shrink week, where the body starts to tighten and tone. And what I've discovered is it's autophagy ramping up. There's different levels that you get from your body, different levels of autophagy. The first 24 hours, it's just really getting started. By the time you're 36 hours in, 48 hours in, you're really getting a lot of benefit from that process of autophagy. And then on day 14, 15, it goes to a whole nother level where you get this amazing cleansing and healing, and the body doesn't focus on necessarily dumping toxins. It's like doing this incredible cleanup process, and that lasts for about 7 days. So days 14 to 21, you may not lose any weight, but that's where your tightening and shrinking comes from. So we teach weight loss without loose skin because we've been able to replicate that process literally thousands of times. And it's because of how we teach it. You can see one of the issues I had was a heart palpitation. And my heart palpitations were progressively getting worse. So I knew I was going to have heart issues in my 40s. And it scared me because I had uncles and family members that passed from heart issues, heart attacks, strokes, blah, blah, blah. So when I started fasting, literally while I was fasting, my heart palpitations got worse. But then after fasting consistently and changing my dietary habits, the heart palpitations went away completely. So there's been probably, 9 years since I've had a heart palpitation, maybe 10 years. You can see blood pressure, cholesterol, those sorts of things are going to regulate. So when you have hormonal irregularities, you're going to see that stuff regulate through fasting. You're going to see if you deal with fibroids, polyps, even tumors, things of that nature. Now, obviously, it depends on how long you fast and the type of fasting you do, but you can see those types of things reduce in size, or completely we'll just say you can't find them on the scans anymore. Yeah, so it's really, and then of course you get some beautification too. Your skin tightens, the wrinkles and fine lines diminish. You begin to get a glow. We noticed early on that a lot of people would lose somewhere close to 10 years of age. And we're talking, you could probably get the metabolic scans and get the testing done. But I'm saying like they looked 10 years younger, And so you get better energy, better sleep. We have plenty of people that deal with sleep apnea and those types of issues that will go away with fasting. So, I mean, I could literally be here all day talking about the benefits.
I love it, man. It's awesome to hear. You mentioned autophagy. You want to mention that a little bit and what it actually does for us?
Yeah. So autophagy is, what they term self-eating. It's basically the body recycling dead, mutated cells, scooping up that extra protein when you have loose skin, and either discarding what it doesn't need and then revitalizing what's damaged, weak, and not functioning well. One of the things that people complain about in modern times is not having enough energy. So we understand that the cells produce energy through ATP. Well, in order to get hydration into the cells, your cells need to be high functioning, because if they're inflamed, if they're toxic, it's going to be hard to get water into the cells so that you can generate the energy. So autophagy will help to revitalize those cells, increase your capacity for energy. So you're going to gain a lot of your energy back. But autophagy is probably the main workhorse as it relates to fasting, which is what's doing like a lot of the heavy lifting and our healing and the revitalization. Also, the human growth hormone explodes. So after roughly 48 hours, you get, huge increases of human growth hormone. So autophagy and human growth hormone work hand in hand to help repair. And that's the reason why we see these crazy results. Looking 10 years younger, being able to lose 2 pounds per day, tightening the skin, cognitive function returning. It's because the body is designed in a very intelligent way, and it always wants to move towards homeostasis, which is this balance. It wants to be healthy. So all we have to do is just get out of the way most of the time. You know, Obviously, we live in a world where it's very toxic, but most of the time, if you just get out of the body's way, it'll do the majority of the healing for you.
Absolutely, man. Can you speak to the different types of fasts?
Yeah, okay, so we're gonna just start with like the traditional fast and move to kind of more of like the more modern fasting techniques. So when you look at like biblical texts or ancient texts, when they talk about fasting, what they're talking about is what we call dry fasting, and that's where you don't eat or drink for a designated period of time. And in modern times, it's very important if you want to do dry fasting that you understand the ins and outs before you just jump in. You especially want to prep because hydration is a very important tool to use during dry fasting. And because our bodies are so low functioning, you can experience some really, really bad detox symptoms from not properly prepping and not properly refeeding. So dry fasting is the traditional fast. Then you have water fasting, which is more of like the more modern phenomena. It's a lot safer than dry fasting because the thing about dry fasting is your digestive system pretty much goes completely to rest. With water fasting, the body is still digesting water. A lot of people don't realize the water we drink is not the same water the cells use. So when you drink water, there's energy, there's a digestion process to make that water usable by the cells. And so you don't get as much healing as you would get from dry fasting, but it's plenty, right? It's plenty. People don't have to dry fast to get results. And then you've got juice fasting, which is basically you're using plant material, you're juicing plant material, and you're having that instead of food. And juicing is like really powerful because you still get the nutrition from the juice. You also get like the acid if you use like, let's say, grape juice or orange juice or even apple juice. The acid from the fruit will actually clean up the intestinal tract. So that's a very big benefit because for the past 20, 30, 40, 50 years, you've been eating synthetic foods. A lot of people don't realize that we eat synthetic foods. Like back in the 90s when margarine really got popular, and like, I can't believe it's not butter and all these different butter alternatives. Like, we found out that margarine was only one molecule away from being plastic. So you're eating these synthetic foods and the body doesn't digest and metabolize them. So what happens? This stuff gets pretty much, it lines the intestinal tract. And so you have malabsorption. You're constantly, bacteria is constantly leaching into your bloodstream, and it's a major problem. That's why people have a lot of illnesses and they can't figure out what's going on. So doing prolonged juice fasting will help to break down that rubber coating and release it. And also, if you have like major daily activities, your cognitive function stays high when you have juice, especially if you do half a gallon to a gallon of juice a day. You pretty much don't feel like you're fasting, which is beneficial. Then you've got like your fruit fasting or your mono fasting. Mono fastings where you have one whole food item per meal or per day, and that's beneficial because you're digesting something that's simple and easy for the body to digest. It's not complicated. So once again, if you kind of look at it from the lens of how much energy does the body have to use to digest, that kind of helps you understand how powerful that fast will be. The less digesting the body has to do, the more powerful the fast is. And the reason that is because, depending on who you talk to, the body uses anywhere from 60% to 90% of its daily energetic reserve to digest food. So if you're lethargic, if you're unhealthy, if you're sick, whatever, if you can recapture all of that energy or a portion of that energy, then the body's able to use that for healing and wellness and everything else. So you just get better functionality.
Absolutely. Love it, man. So when it comes to intermittent fasting, do you do that at all?
So yes, intermittent fasting is one of those things that, for me personally, it happened naturally after my first 5 to 6 months of fasting. I didn't fast like 5 to 6 months straight. I want to be clear, but over the course of about half a year, I would fast regularly. So I would do no less than 5 days of fasting when I would fast, and I would fast between 5 days and 13 days at a time. Also during that time, I was changing my diet. So I went strict alkaline diet. And when I came out of that, because my goal was to heal, I wanted to heal and be better, feel better. When I came out of that, I couldn't eat more than once a day. So I naturally went into a like an OMAD, a 1 meal a day strategy, and then over time, let's say maybe after maybe a year or two, I then kind of transitioned into like intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting is, you're going to designate a window, like an eating window. Some people like, an 8 hour eating window. I personally think that if you're going to do intermittent fasting, your window should be 6 hours or less. And if you really want to get the benefit of the intermittent fasting, you want like a 4 hour eating window. And there's no snacking in between your eating window. That's very important. No snacking, no juice, no nuts, no mints, no gum. It's like, I'm fasting. You might have some water, maybe a herbal tea or something like that. But then you eat during your eating window. And the goal during your eating window is not to try to get in all your daily calories for the 2,000 calories, whatever, 2,500 calories. You just eat until you're sated. You eat until you're sated. So it's a good opportunity to learn portion control. And what happens over time when you do this process, your body starts to adjust and get used to it. And then it just becomes like your lifestyle. It's daily. And it becomes very easy, in my opinion.
Absolutely, man. So is there anything people should watch out for when it comes to fasting? Anything that they should, I guess, watch out in order to not do? Like anything that people should not do when they're fasting? And also, is there anyone who should not fast, if you want to get into that at all?
Yeah. So what you want to watch out for, I think one of the biggest issues, I think I plan on doing a video about this soon. I call it the last meal. It's one of the most common things that people do, and it's so detrimental. But basically, you're going to start fasting on Monday, right? So Sunday evening, you want to go all out. It's literally like you're on death row. It's your last meal, and you just want to have everything you want. And people commonly do this because they think, well, I'm going to be fasting for the next X amount of days. I might as well get it in while I can. That it does a couple of negative things. But when you go into a fast, most people are going to deal with detox symptoms, whether it's cravings, hunger pangs, headaches, or whatever. I recommend you actually prep your body for the fast, because if you prep your body for the fast, you can reduce or mitigate detox symptoms. So it makes your fast easier. Okay? Now, when you go into it and you've just got finished partying, drinking, eating pizza, whatever, you actually make things far more difficult. your first day is going to be so much harder than it would be if you would have went into it prepping. So you're going to make your fast really hard. And that's probably the main issue there. On the other side of things, when you do your refeed, I always tell people, do not fast and then reward yourself by going to the Chinese buffet or, having your favorite food or whatever. Don't fast for X amount of time and then go to a birthday party and drink. And you're going to, whenever I saw people hurt themselves with fasting, it was never the fasting itself. It was never the process of fasting. It was always the refeed. The refeed is where, because your body becomes very sensitive when you fast. And people need to understand how the body kind of works and the logic. But the body has all these protection mechanisms. You drink, you eat toxic food, you eat fake food, you drink toxic water. And so the body over time builds up these mechanisms to help you filter out all that toxicity. And those mechanisms, because you don't change the environment, eventually become a problem. They will make you sick, right? If we take mucus, for example, a lot of people think mucus is bad for you, but mucus is actually a benefit. It's a tool the body uses to suspend toxicity. The problem is you eat mucus-forming foods and you never stop. You go into an environment that causes mucus and you just never leave. And so the mucus builds and then it itself becomes a problem and it can make you sick. So when you fast, the body starts flushing that mucus out, right? It starts removing those barriers that are there to catch toxicity, because for the first time in only God knows how long, you're giving the body an environment to heal. So it removes those barriers because it can't heal with those barriers still in place. So now you come off the fast, those barriers are gone now, because that's how the body was able to do all this amazing healing. And then you shock the body by eating some processed garbage, taking in something very toxic. My sister, I've had virtually all of my siblings fast, and they've all had like incredible results. My sister ended up losing I think 147 pounds when she did her fast, and she wasn't really locked in with the full process. She kind of wanted to do things her way, so she didn't really listen to me. She kind of listened. Well, she ended up doing a fast and then going and getting Popeyes chicken, because she loves Popeyes chicken. And she developed like a skin eruption, a pimple. She developed some kind of pimple, we'll say, on her cheek after she ate that food. And then over time, the pimple got bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually it popped. And when it popped, it left a small hole in her cheek. She said she could stick a pin through her cheek. Why? Because the Popeye's chicken is not real food. So she came off of long stints of fasting. And then she decided to eat something that was completely poisonous for her body. And her body responded in that way. I've also seen people come off their fast and have to have, emergency surgeries and end up in the hospital and all kinds of craziness, because your body is super sensitive. And we just think, oh, I've always eaten this stuff. I've always done this stuff. And it's just like, yeah, but you've had these protections in place that are no longer there. So those are some of the big ones. Now, as far as who, shouldn't be fasting, if you deal with well, first of all, if you're pregnant, you shouldn't fast. If you're breastfeeding, you probably shouldn't fast. People who deal with bulimia and things of that nature, mental issues like that, you shouldn't fast. If you're malnourished in the sense that you're underweight and you're really frail, you shouldn't fast. And those are some of the main people that I have found shouldn't fast. Now, obviously, these are kind of circumstantial. You can improve your health. You can improve your, eventually the baby gets older. You don't have to breastfeed, whatever. So then you could do it then. And then there's also alternatives to fasting that you could use. We talked earlier about mono fasting. There's intermittent fasting. There's OMAD. There's alternative options versus like pure water fasting that certain types of people can do instead of. Because I have people in my group that are like, yeah, I'm pregnant, but I'm also like 100 pounds overweight, not because of the baby, but because I'm unhealthy. And I don't know, like some women just get this inclination to want to heal and be healthier when they get pregnant. And so a lot of people are like, no, you can't do it. And they don't offer them any alternative. And it's like, well, you could just really clean up your diet. Raw food is a great option. Mono foods, or alkaline. Eating alkaline is a great option. Or even if you're eating every day, that doesn't mean you have to eat 6 times a day. Because a lot of people, they say, oh, you can't, when you're carrying a baby, you have to worry about the nutrition of the baby. You're eating for two. Well, most people walking around, when we look at modern day obesity, that's malnourishment. Malnourishment looks like modern day obesity. Yes, you're overweight, you're big, so it looks like you eat a lot and whatever, but you're not absorbing nutrients. So if your concern is the baby, then getting the body to be able to absorb nutrients should be the goal. And so, like I said, some of the cleansing and things you could do will help the body absorb nutrients better. And then that way the baby will get what it needs, even though you're taking steps in the right direction to cleanse yourself. So there's a lot of nuance to it. I do make general statements to kind of keep people safe, but when we do like one-on-one consultations or even within our private areas, we have different discussions where we give people options.
God, that's a powerful insight, man. For sure. Is there things that break a fast while you're doing it? Like, what should we be avoiding? Or is there anything that we can actually consume while we're fasting?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of people have different techniques for how they fast. And when you ask me about the different fasting methods, I didn't just the same way I could be here talking about the benefits of fasting. I could literally talk about the different ways people fast like forever. Bulletproof coffee was a very popular. I'm assuming it probably still is. So here's the thing. I guess technically, when people talk about what can you eat or take during a fast, they're really talking about how can I keep the body in ketosis while I'm fasting. I personally, when I very first started learning about fasting and teaching fasting, I was a fasting purist. So taking anything besides water would break the fast. Not in a scientific sense that the body would come out of ketosis, but just in the sense that this was what we had decided to do. We decided to do water only. We're going to do water only. But there's lots of different options, I suppose, if you're just trying to stay in ketosis. What I usually recommend for people if they're going to take something, we've got an appetite suppressant tea, because one of the things that people deal with the most is hunger pangs and cravings. So we developed a tea to help people to reduce that. So what I would usually recommend, any herbal tea that's designed to help detox the body or aid you during that process, I'm usually okay with. Any infused water. So you basically take a gallon of water or whatever, and you cut up a couple key limes or some lemons or some mint or whatever plant material you might want, and you let it cold steep in the water for about 4 hours. You then remove the fruit or the plant material and you drink that. So that's completely acceptable in my eyes. That'll help with electrolytes and giving you a little bit more energy if you feel like you need it, without having a detrimental impact. Because there are other fasting communities that promote like electrolyte powders and drinks, and there's different supplements you could buy online, these electrolyte powders, and people like to use it during their fasting, which is fine. Everybody can do what they want. It's not going to hurt you per se. But what I found is most people who have 60 to 100 plus pounds to lose, they fear loose skin. And so when I looked at these other communities and their outcomes, everybody was getting loose skin. So the electrolyte powders and drinks in this traditional sense, they work as far as making the fast easier, but I noticed everybody was getting loose skin. My methods allow you to continue to still have that little bit of extra something, but then you don't have to worry about the loose skin still. So it's kind of like a give and take. There's a balance. So what else? There are some supplements that I'm completely okay with. Pretty much all essential oils, I'm completely fine with. And people use essential oils on their fast to help mitigate headaches, restlessness. If you're having trouble sleeping, if you want more energy, whatever the case may be, you could use essential oils. I just recommend that you research and you find a brand that you want a therapeutic grade oil, and people put chemicals and all kinds of fillers and stuff in those essential oils, so you just got to be careful. But if you get a reputable brand, you're good on the essential oils. And then there's some supplements that we recommend with our fast, and we do these huge challenges, and depending on what outcome we're looking for, whether it's more weight loss, less detox symptoms, better disease reversal, we'll have different supplements that we recommend. So it just depends. But as far as like eating food, I personally don't teach that. There are some people that do. There's what's called the fasting mimicking diet, where you can eat a specific types of foods that help keep your body in ketosis, and it basically tricks your body into thinking it's fasting when it's not. So you get some of the benefits of fasting without actually fasting. And I really never got into the fasting mimicking diet. And I was reintroduced to me this past week. And I was thinking, you know what? Earlier when we talked about some of those people that can't fast, I was just thinking, man, this would be great for those types of people. So I think over the course of the next month or two, I'll actually start looking into the fasting mimicking diet more, because I think it'll help. It'll be an option or alternative for that subset of people that really shouldn't be doing like pure water fasting.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Is there anything else that people should know about fasting, or have we covered it?
Oh, I mean, there's so much more to know about fasting. I think that it's important to understand that fasting, if you're fasting to reverse a disease, or you're fasting to lose weight, or you're fasting for some type of health implication, you want to understand that you're going to probably feel a little worse before you feel better. You know, the reason for that is a lot of what is causing your problem is in your blood. It's maybe different chemicals you've come in contact with, certain injections, certain antibiotics and things that you've taken. And in order for the body to like recycle and clean that up, it's got to get those chemical constituents out of the system. So when you start fasting, you're going to experience a release of these chemicals, and it's not going to make you feel good. So a lot of people talk about the euphoria that comes with fasting and the benefits and how good you felt, and that happens, but it doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't happen for everybody. Some people feel really bad during their fast. And it's just important to understand what the body's doing and why, so that when you do your fasting, you're not scared. Because a lot of people will quit their fasting because they're scared. For example, when I was dealing with the heart palpitations. So I had heart palpitations before I ever started fasting. I start fasting and they get worse while I'm fasting. I could have got scared and been like, oh, this is bad. It's getting worse. I'm making myself sick. I'm making myself worse. But there was something in the back of my mind that was like, no, this is the way. Like, you're going to have to do this. And so I wasn't worried, even though I should have been, And it paid off big for me, because now I don't have them at all. But if I would have got scared and been like, oh, no, this ain't for me. This isn't going the way that they say. This isn't all peaches and rainbows. I might have quit and just never touched it again. And I've had that story told to me multiple times. People have various different issues. A big one was like acid reflux. people, they start fasting, and it's very interesting because you think people start fasting and they get this crazy acid reflux, and it causes them to stop fasting. And it's like you need to look into that and figure out why is that happening. That's not, you shouldn't get acid reflux because you stopped eating, you know. So people get fearful, but fasting is a tool that can be used for holistic wellness. But I do like people to understand it's not a magic bullet. It's not the end all be all. You can't fast your way out of a bad diet. You can't fast your way out of a poor lifestyle or a poor environment. You need to look at your health holistically, use fasting as a tool, and not as a crutch. One of my friends, when he started fasting, skin cleared up, looked great, energy levels better, all the benefits, but then he would get off the wagon and he would start eating McDonald's and this other stuff, and his skin would just start exploding again, and he had all these issues. And I'd be like, hey man, what's going on? He's like, oh, I haven't really been on it lately. It's all good. I'm gonna just do a fast. I'll clear it up. And I was just like, you're abusing fasting. Like that's not wise, because it's a mindset thing. What eventually is going to happen is all those bad habits, they're going to take up with you and they're going to overtake you. You're going to stop using fasting, which he eventually did, and things are going to continue to degrade. So the other thing I'll say too is fasting is not just a physical thing. It is, when you look at the soul, the human, you're looking at a physical, energetic, mental being, entity. We live in multiple different dimensions, and fasting affects each of these dimensions. And one of the benefits of it is if you have trauma, if you've got trauma you've experienced as a child, a lot of times we forget things that happen to us. You could use fasting as a tool to help flush that stuff out. So you will experience what I call an emotional detox, where you'll cry, or you'll be really happy, or you'll be very angry for no reason while you're fasting. That's something to look out for. You may be releasing trauma that you have pent up in your system and your organs that you're unaware of. If you're looking for spiritual benefits, I recommend that you fast for a minimum of 10 days. It can happen more quickly than that, but what I've found is that typically between days 8 and 10, people start to get this spiritual closeness. If you're looking to get closer to the Creator, whatever you believe in, I recommend 10 days, about 10 days. So that's just kind of like a cap. There's lots of different benefits of fasting, lots of different ways to do it. But just keep in mind that it's a tool that you use alongside of lifestyle change, and if you do that, it'll be something that'll serve you well.
All right, man. Appreciate you coming on and sharing all your insights with us. It's been awesome. It's such a powerful tool we can utilize in our own lives, and learning how to skillfully do it, learning about the different types, different benefits in our lives can be so valuable, right? And just being able to experiment with it and see what works for us, right? And just notice the benefits, and that's what all starts, man. So I appreciate you.
Pleasure's mine. Thanks for having me on.
If people want to learn more about you and what you do, where can we find you?
So I've got probably 3 major platforms you guys can check out. I've got my YouTube channel, which is a healthy alternative on YouTube. I've got my membership. We've got a free membership where people can come learn and ask questions, just really figure things out. That's ahacommunities.com. And then I've got my my main website, which is ahealthyalternative.org. So you guys can come check us out and learn more.
All right, man. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.